the twilight of the gods, the doom of Asgard, the end of all creation, Ragnarok, the unpleasant and frightening prophecy of the end of all world and all the life along with it. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Ragnarok, the doom of the gods and men, marked by the death of the much loved and adored god Baldur, the blowing of the legendary yell horn by the eternal god of the gods Heimdall to announce the final battle at the end of time itself. But let's not dwell in the fragments of the story of this devastating event and start from the first dark omens of terrifying visions of Baldur, of paranoia that Odin faced, and of all the efforts he made to prevent Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the final event of doom and destruction of the Norse cosmos and the gods and all of its living things. But this event is marked by many shortcomings. The things that the supreme god of Norse pantheon, Odin, wants to prevent at any cost, and so his quest for knowledge. From the very beginning of the cosmos, the much wise god Odin knew about a dark and horrible future of destruction that hangs above their head, and so the Allfather wandered far in search for knowledge that are unknown even to the divine beings, knowledge that are rare and are contained in the unknown places of the universe, knowledge that takes courage and sacrifice to gain, and Odin knows them well. The risks of gathering mystic and magical wisdom, the risk that cost him an eye, that he sacrificed to Mimir, the wise giant, in exchange for drinking from his well of knowledge. And so, drinking the elixir of wisdom from the well, even with one eye, he saw ever more. But his divine visions were limited. Just before the end of the time, he needs to know the fate of the cosmos, written by the Nords, the weaver of fates in the Norse pantheon. And so, he hung himself to Yggdrasil, the tree of all cosmos, and sacrificed himself to himself in order to know the secret of the runes that the Nords wrote, and the plans, and many more extreme measures. But the main reason for Ragnarok is undoubtedly the trickster god Loki, foretold in the prophecies for him to be the agent of chaos and destruction, and his terrifying children would aid in the destruction of the cosmos and play the lead role in it. These three children are no ordinary beings, but rather the offspring of Loki and the giantess Angrboda, with whom Loki fathered two monstrous sons, the serpent Jormungand and the wolf Fenrir, and a daughter, the terrifying half-living and half-dead Hel. Upon encountering these beings, even as children, the gods were frightened, for they were aware of the doom that awaits them in future, and they must do everything in power to stop the ultimate destruction. And so the gods sought to eliminate those problems, as Odin ordered Jormungand to be cast out into the ocean, hoping the crushing waves would kill it. Hel was dispatched to the realm of the dead, Helheim, and was ordered to rule the unworthy dead as their queen. But the wolf Fenrir frightened Odin the most, thus kept him under watchful eyes within the proximity of the gods to make sure no ill would be caused. Fenrir was only a cub that one specific god adored. That was Tyr, the god of war and justice. He took care of Fenrir every day, but Fenrir stayed a cub for not long, for his growth in size and strength concerned the Aesir gods, and they decided that Fenrir must be restrained in order to prevent the potential catastrophe. And so their plan began to bind him with strong chains, presenting him as a challenge that the gods shall bind Fenrir with chains to check his strength, that if he could shatter the chains. And each time the god presented Fenrir with stronger and stronger chains. Every time he broke free of the bondage. To cover up the scheme, the gods cheered, as Fenrir would break free of the chains, and the wolf would be glad to receive the praise. But even with much effort, the gods could not bind the beast, and thus the god turned to the greatest craftsman in all of the 9 realms, the dwarves of Svartalheim, and gave them the task to make the strongest of the chains. They would make a magical chain from the sounds of cat's footstep, the bed of a woman, the breath of a fish, the roots of a mountain, the spit of a bird, and other impossible elements of nature. For in order to bind a beast with impossible strength, the chain must be made with impossible items. This chain was named Gleipnir, made by the dwarves, who were strong enough to bind Fenrir. But the wolf at this point grew skeptical and said it would only cooperate if the gods guarantee to enchain him if he fails to break the chains. And to assure that, a god had to place his hand in its mouth, for if they don't unchain Fenrir, he would bite off that god's arm. No one but Tyr dared to volunteer, and as planned, the wolf couldn't break free, and the gods won't untie him, and thus the noble Tyr lost his arm to the wolf. Perhaps these are the reasons Loki grew hysterical and angered the gods, watching his children suffer. Perhaps these are the reasons he grew envy of Baldur, of all the love he received. Perhaps that's why he betrayed the gods. And Baldur, the god of light, would see dark visions of doom and destruction. He would see his own death, bad omen for the Aesir. And so the goddess Frigg, wife of Odin, queen of Asgard, and mother to Baldur, tried to make an effort to make Baldur invulnerable to all things in the universe. She went out to all creatures, trees, mountains, lakes, rivers, and all things that exist, and made them give a magical promise that they won't hurt Baldur. And so he became invulnerable to all things, except one: mistletoes, for Frigg didn't consider them to be worthy enough to be a risk. Was it ignorance? Or was it simple foolishness, a lack of attention to detail that would cost her her son's life? As Loki used his opportunity to trick the blind god Hodr by giving him an arrow of mistletoe, manipulating him to shoot a target which was actually Baldur, the most loved of all gods. Tragedy fell in Asgard, as this event would mark the future arrival of Ragnarok. And Loki, he vanished from Asgard and hid himself as the trickster he was before Thor found him and caught the evil deceiver. The gods have tolerated much of his mischief, but this one evil act, this betrayal, won't be tolerated by the gods, and thus he would be chained by the gods under a venomous snake, dropping its toxic venom on Loki's face, causing extreme pain. Wish this would have been the end. Wish this would have been a successful containment of the forces of evil and of Loki. But the alarms of Ragnarok started ringing at the death of Baldur, and now there's no escaping it. The serpent, cast into the ocean, would not die, but would grow into immense size that it would encircle the whole of Midgard. This creature would be the ultimate nemesis of Thor, the thunder god, and would have some violent encounter with him before their final battle during Ragnarok. There would be violent earthquakes that would shatter the chains of Fenrir and Loki. Finally freed, they would prepare their offensive against the gods. The Yell horn would be blown by Heimdall that would echo through the 9 realms, as he would declare the final battle of the gods against the forces of evil. A formidable army of the giants would be formed to battle the gods, led by none other than Loki. They would invade Asgard and do much damage. And Loki's daughter, Hel, would bring her army of the much dishonorable dead. But her brothers, Jormungand and Fenrir, would do the unthinkable, as they would kill the 2 most important and powerful gods of the Norse pantheon, Odin and Thor. Fenrir would kill the mighty leader of the gods, Odin, before Odin's son Vidar would avenge him by ripping apart the creature's mouth. Jormungand would fight Thor, indulging in an intense battle, and would injure him deep. But the strike of Thor's mighty hammer, Mjolnir, would crush the serpent's head, and the Aesir would cheer his name. But Thor would take exactly 9 steps before succumbing to the injuries and its toxic venom that would bring death to Thor. And Loki would duel Heimdall as they take each other's life at the end of times. But the final strike, that would be delivered by Surtr, the fire giant. He would bring the final hellish inferno that would scourge the heaven and the earth. All would be dead. The forces of good and evil would nullify each other, and everything would fall into nothingness as stars from the sky would vanish. And the sun and the moon would be devoured by the 2 wolves, Skull and Hati. All would die, with some exceptions, as the plan of Odin, even after his death, would prevail. As only one couple, Lif and Lifthrasir, would survive Ragnarok that would repopulate Midgard. Baldur would return from death and would lead the surviving Aesir, including Odin's son, Vidar and Vali, and Thor's son, Magni and Modi, into a new age as the new sun would rise over the sky, marking the new dawn for men and gods alike.